Welcome to the REKAP Room. I'm Michael Kaplan, founder of the REKAP Group here in Chicago. This is where renters become buyers, buyers become investors, and average decisions turn into long-term wealth. No fluff, no hype, just strategy. Let's get into it. Welcome back. I wish I had one of those, I forget what you call them, when they start a show where they the director's reel thing. Yeah, if I could have one of those, Pat, get on that. We need to get one of those. Episode 43. I'm feeling pretty good today. It's May 11th. Weather's starting to turn in Chicago. And I have a theory, and I honestly don't even think it's a theory. I think it's just a proven fact. Like, people in Chicago enjoy the summer so much more because our weather sucks. And this is probably true anywhere where the weather is not great all year round. But we enjoy the summer so much more because we don't get summer all year round. Like, if you live in California or Florida or like somewhere where it's hot all year round, it's like you got two seasons, hot and hotter. Chicago, we got all four, truly all four. And so when the weather's good, people are ready to show up and show out. But the thing is not only does the weather get hotter, but so does the real estate market. And the real estate market right now, I feel like, is at an inflection point in Chicago. But today, really what I want to talk about on this episode 43 is why it's gotten so crazy in the Chicago market. Like, people don't understand the fundamentals as to why real estate in Chicago has gotten as crazy as it has, especially over the pretty much last few years since COVID. And I will start off by saying this. It is not because people are having this mass influx into Chicago, okay? I know there's this, trend of let's gatekeep Chicago and let's not tell people how great it is so they don't move here. The reason Chicago is getting expensive and continues to get more expensive from a housing perspective is not because people are moving here. In fact, the population in Chicago is pretty stagnant. Just about as many people leaving as coming in. The reasons Chicago has gotten expensive are for what I'm about to list. So, number one, I'd say a really big reason, and probably the biggest reason, is that there's just not enough inventory on the market. There's not enough supply to meet the demand. This is not a demand issue, it is a supply issue. Because if it was a demand issue, it's not like we're one of these COVID boom towns where there was 1,000 people a day moving here. Chicago, honestly, after COVID, a lot of people left and are kind of like coming back. But again, it's about stagnant. The issue is there's not enough supply. We don't build enough. It's very expensive to build in Chicago. The tax implications of building in Chicago and having properties in Chicago are exorbitant. I think Illinois ranks the worst in the country in terms of property taxes. And what I think people don't understand enough, especially if you're a renter, right? If you're renting an apartment in Chicago, you're not the one writing the check for the tax bill the 2 times a year it comes, right? And you're not seeing that the property tax on the property just went up 50%, 20%, whatever. And so you don't, in your mind, think, oh, my rent shouldn't go up because they've done nothing to the property. I hear that. Oh, the amount of times I hear that, I don't get why my landlord just raised my rent. He's literally done nothing to make it nicer. Well, I understand, but when the landlord's property tax bill goes up 20% in a year, your rent's going to go up 20% in a year, even if the landlord did absolutely nothing to the property, right? And so that's why I tell people the ones who should be most against property tax hikes and the most vocal against how outrageous the property tax burden has gotten in Chicago and in Illinois are renters, because they're the ones who take the brunt of it. Because at the end of the day, the property owner, when that property tax bill goes up, they just pass that cost along to the renter. That's just what happens. So that's kind of the biggest thing here, is that we don't have enough supply and there's just extremely high property taxes that make it very difficult for any investor to kind of stomach and want to build more housing here, which is kind of like this endless doom loop where there's not enough supply, the cost to build and the cost of taxes are so expensive, which creates less supply, and the cycle continues. So those are kind of like two of the main things that I'm seeing right now. I guess this is number 3 really, is that people and I want to kind of put a disclaimer on whatever the title is going to be, because it's going to be something along the lines of why Chicago's gotten so expensive and what you can do about it. Chicago as a whole hasn't gotten really all like crazy expensive from a national perspective. But when people talk about these crazy rent increases or the bidding wars down the street, oh, I went to a bidding. I was trying to find an apartment. We had to put 10 offers on place, and we still didn't get something. 50, 100,000 over asking. Or if it's an apartment, there's a line down the block. That's only happening in like 5 neighborhoods, because Chicago, despite being a city of 77 neighborhoods, a lot of people, I could tell you from personal experience, from our clients, 85, 90% of them want to live in Lakeview, Lincoln Park, Old Town. That's it. They won't look anywhere else. And you're not unique if you think you're the only person who wants that, right? It's Lakeview, Lincoln Park, Old Town, and then a 4th neighborhood du jour, West Loop, Bucktown, whatever. But by and large, that's where the bidding wars are happening. And it's because everybody is saying, okay, I want to live in these few neighborhoods, and they're not willing to look anywhere else. So I always want to make a disclaimer when people are like, it's gotten so crazy, it's gotten so competitive. Yes, I'm not saying it hasn't. But the reality is you're not doing yourself any favors by refusing to look anywhere outside of your, 4 streets, the boundaries of the neighborhood that you want to be in or are accustomed to. Because ultimately, you could find some amazing deals in some other neighborhoods that aren't nearly as expensive. But again, it's supply and demand. If there's a lot of people who want to live in a specific place and there's not enough supply to meet that demand, the prices will go up. And you think about the neighborhoods where the prices are going up the most, right? Look at a place like Lincoln Park. I'll just use that as an example because that's where our office is, and that's the hottest market in the city. You don't see a lot of big, massive high-rises in Lincoln Park, okay? Lincoln Park is dominated, and the reason why a lot of people love it here is because it's got that neighborhood feel. It's not a concrete jungle, right? It has, you're just outside of the main part of downtown, but you've got charming streets. You've got a lot of 2 and 3 flats. You've got a lot of smaller, more boutique buildings. So by nature, you have less supply. And the people that live in these neighborhoods don't want their property values to go down by the fact of, okay, they're going to build, or it's kind of twofold. They don't want their property values to go down, and they don't want the eyesore, I'm just calling a spade, of putting massive high-rises all over the neighborhood, even though that would alleviate the problem, right? As much as there's a force of wanting to bring housing costs and rent prices down, all that does is hurt the people who are already property owners, right? So if you own a condo, a house in Lincoln Park, the last thing you want is rent values to go down. The last thing you want is them building a bunch of stuff in the backyard of your neighborhood, because that means that's going to affect your property values, and it's ultimately could become an eyesore depending on what type of building they're building. Because a lot of these buildings nowadays, they don't look all that aesthetically appealing. It loses some of the character and the charm, which is the reason that brings people to these neighborhoods. So that's something that I think people don't really understand. It's like, yes, we want rent prices to go down. And this is just a general thing about life. Like, everybody wants it. Everything sounds great in theory. Like, okay, if you were to pull 100 people on the street right now on Fullerton and Lincoln Park, do you want rent prices to go down? I guarantee you almost all of them, if not all of them, would say yes, right? But the implications of what that would take means more inventory. That's it. It's the only way out of this situation. It's the only way. I know there's a lot of people who want to say, well, we could do rent control and we could ban this and ban this fee and ban that. That doesn't work. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. We tried that with security deposits in Chicago, okay? They tried to make them, hold them in a specific account and return them with a specific, and then landlords, what did they do? They just made move-in fees, non-refundable. There's always ways around. The only way out of this situation is by more supply. But just as much as those 100 people who said they want lower rents say they want lower rents. If you were to poll them and say, okay, how many of you are for building a new high rise right here, which is walking distance from the house that you own or the condo that you own? That number is going to be a lot lower, right? That number is going to be a lot lower. And so there's two forces kind of working at odds here. It's like finding that perfect equilibrium. I think a neighborhood that's done it very well is a neighborhood like the West Loop. I think there is definitely not as much. And I live in the West Loop now, so I could say this. So no shade to the West Loop, but there's definitely not as much of a neighborhood charm as a place like Lincoln Park in the West Loop. But what they do have is an abundance of options. I mean, every street corner there's a different high-rise that people could live in. And sure, it is still expensive to live in the West Loop. I'm not going to discount that. But you take a 2-bed, 2-bath in the West Loop and plop it in Lincoln Park. If it's, I mean, you're in the same exact unit, you're two wildly different price points just by moving them to those two different neighborhoods. So I think we need to kind of take a little bit of a step back and understanding, like, yes, everybody wants housing affordability, but people, when they once they see the implications of what that actually is, a lot of them all of a sudden backtrack. Well, no, I don't want to do it by me. Yeah, we could have housing affordability, but not in my neighborhood. And some of them, like, there's a reason why some of these people move to these neighborhoods. It's like anything. Like, why do people buy the designer handbag? It has the same functionality. It has the same utility as a bag that's half, a third, a tenth, whatever. But it's the fact that I own this and you can't. So I want this because it's a label, it's a showing of exclusivity that I can have something that you can't have. That's just human nature since the dawn of time. That's why King Tut's buried with a bunch of gold. I actually don't know if that's true, but I assume King Tut is buried with a lot of gold. But you think, he's dead. He doesn't need the gold, but it's, I have this. I have so much that I can do this, and you can't, right? It's the same reason why people live in these expensive neighborhoods. Now, yeah, there's it's a little different with a handbag versus where you live because there's a lifestyle aspect to schools and things like that. But, you can live you can still live in some of these neighborhoods for a relatively decent price, but you have to adjust your expectation of what you're going to get, right? $3,000 a month ain't going to get you the same $3,000 a month that it did 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. I mean, we've seen some increases in some of these parts of Lincoln Park where you'll literally see a place that went 5-6 years ago for $500,000 and now is going just shy of $1 million. And that's not being like exaggeratory, right? So that is, I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's kind of number 3 is that there's two kind of competing things here. And what they'll say online, the terms that they use are NIMBYs and YIMBYs. So NIMBYs are not in my backyard, and YIMBYs are yes in my backyard. A NIMBY is somebody who does not want new buildings. They don't want a lot of new development because they think it's ruining the charm of the neighborhood, right? They don't want tear downs. They don't want things that are more modern. They want to keep the charm and the characteristics of the neighborhood the same. And on the other side, there's YIMBYs who are like, yes, let's develop, let's build more. That's the only way out of the situation. We need more supply. But there's two competing camps that are at odds with each other. And ultimately, the only way out of the situation is by building more. But when you have a whole camp of people that don't want new development, and some of them, I mean, it boggles my mind. There's some people who don't want new development because they think it's making developers richer. And so they're like, no, we don't want new development. You're gentrifying the area. Okay, but the only way to get cheaper prices across the board is if we allow developers to build new. So I'm not really sure what your answer, I don't know what your answer is. If you want lower prices and you don't want people to build, then you don't actually want lower prices. You don't. And that's fine, but that's just the pill that you have to swallow. So that's kind of the long-winded answer there, that people, a lot of them want to live in the same few neighborhoods, and a lot of those people in those neighborhoods don't want new development. I could tell you right now that people in Lincoln Park, a lot of it's generational wealth, a lot of it's some people that have been there for many, many years. They do not want it changing. There's a reason they love it. There's a reason they moved there, and they want it to be the exact same. So, is what it is. Sorry, another tangent here, but Coke Zero, so much better than Diet Coke. I don't know. I mean, there's no way you can convince me otherwise. It's just, this is actually a cherry Coke Zero, which, like, I'm feeling really crazy today if I'm having cherry Coke Zero. But kind of parlaying this, I know this is a lot about the buyers and sellers market, but the rental market's equally insane, and they kind of parlay into each other, right? The rental market and the buy and selling market, because when rent prices go up, property values go up. When property values go up, rent prices go. They work in hand in hand. And I could tell you there's really only a couple things you can do as a renter in these situations, because what the benefit of the property owner has, like I said earlier and touched on earlier, is that when the landlord or the property owner has a property tax increase, or the cost of labor goes up, or whatever happens, like you've seen over the last 5 years in Chicago, they get the advantage of having their property values go up in tandem with it. And this is one of the key components of why buying is so important, because when you buy something, every single time your property tax bill goes up, right, you theoretically can pass that. You could pass that cost along. You could pass the cost of when it's more expensive to mow your lawn, when it's more expensive to do X, Y, Z, you are able to pass that expense along to your tenants, and that's a big reason why rent prices have gone the way they have, is because those prices are getting passed along through the landlord, because they're the ones footing the bill for it, but they're able to compensate for it on the back end by charging more in rent. As a renter, you don't get the opportunity to do that. You have to pay what the landlord's charging, or you have to find a different area to live, right? Or you have to find some other neighborhoods, which isn't the worst idea, especially in today's market. It's not the worst idea to find somewhere else that's not one of the 3 neighborhoods that you want to live in, or at least initially thought you were going to live in. But that's kind of one of the key components here, is that you're protecting yourself when you own properties from these rent increases, from these things that are somewhat out of your control. But the only people who can really take that blow or actually benefit from it are if you own properties. Now, if you are still going to be renting, and that's your only option at this point, I would suggest that you shy away from looking at, if you're saying, okay, I need to live in a specific area. Michael, I need to live in Lincoln Park, and I won't look anywhere else. If you are not finding enough options within the first 2 weeks of searching, you need to adjust your budget, you need to adjust your location parameters, or you need to adjust your expectations, or a combination of all 3. This is what I tell every single one of our clients, because I, as an agent, can't magically make a building or a unit pop out of my rear end. I'd love to, but I can't do that, right? And when you give us the task of finding an apartment or a condo or a house in Lincoln Park for 2026, but using pricing from even 2025 or 2024, which isn't that long ago, you're leaving us with a task that's pretty much not feasible, right? Like, there's nothing we can do to make those prices revert. That'd be like asking your stockbroker, hey, can you get me the price of Microsoft stock or Apple stock, but the cost of it 5 years ago? They're going to look at you and be like, I don't know what, like, it won't even register in their head. It's like it's a joke. And that's the same thing when you come to us and say, hey, can you get me 2 bedroom, 2 bath in Lincoln Park, but I want it for the same price that my friend paid 3 years ago. It's like, no, I can't do that because you have to pay today's price, okay? And I could tell you, because I've been in the business for 6 years, almost 7 years now, those conversations that people are having today, it's like, oh, I can't believe it went for this much, are the same exact conversations that my clients were having 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years. Oh, I can't believe the condo went for that much. Can't believe it went. That's the nature of buying properties. You go back 100 years. Oh, I can't believe a house went for this. What thing went for $50,000? Like, that is why people buy properties, because inflation's inevitable. The value of the dollar is going to decrease over time. It's a stated goal that the Federal Reserve wants, at least a couple percent each year. They don't want runaway inflation, but they believe that a few percent each year of inflation is good for a healthy economy. So if you don't want the value of your dollar just completely being wiped away by inflation, then you need to buy, and you just have to stomach buying at today's price, because ultimately, I can tell you without doubt, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, our clients are going to be having the same exact conversations. Am I overpaying? I can't believe it went for this much. Outside of maybe 2 times in America's history, property values by and large, especially in Chicago, have gone up. Right? It's kind of like, yep, there's some dips along the way, but generally speaking, the price of the value of these properties have gone up outside of 2008 and I think in the 1920s. But again, in 2008, it's like anything. When those property values went down, I could tell you those people who are able to have enough cash on the sidelines to go purchase those properties for pennies on the dollar have come out like bandits, right? It's the same thing with stocks. Right? When the stock market collapses, everybody freaks out and sells. But the ones who are able to purchase, it's like going and buying on sale, right? So you ultimately have to have realistic expectations going into this process of what you are going to find. And if you're not finding if what you're finding is not out there, especially after looking for like a week, 2 weeks, then you need to kind of adjust and figure out what you're going to do. And if you're looking to buy, that's a different story, because we can work through it with you on that. But if you're looking to rent, then we may advise, hey, it's not worth looking with a broker for what you're looking for. You're looking for a under $2,000 a month, 1 bed in Lincoln Park. You should not be working with a broker. You should be working with a bunch of different listing agents, reaching out to them on your own, because there's no way most of those places are going to want to deal with a tenant's agent and have to split the commission with them. There's not enough juice for the squeeze, okay? Say it's a $2,000 a month apartment, and they have to split it with a tenant's agent. So that usually means $1,000 is going to the list brokerage, not the list agent, the brokerage. Then $1,000 is going to the tenant's brokerage. Then that has to get split between the agent and the brokerage. And then you have to deduct any other fees, and this is before taxes. I mean, what? The agent's going to come out with $300, $400 at the end of it? You really think somebody is going to be busting their butt and going out of their way to go on potentially 10 plus showings, negotiations, all these different things to make $300? I mean, I know $300, like for certain people, it's a lot of money, and I'm not saying it's nothing, but like, when you're dealing with buyers that the commission checks, even on a small purchase, is $5-6 grand. I mean, just use your brains here, right? Think logically. So there's plenty of times where we'll tell clients like, hey, we'll send you what we have access to, but like, you should be looking on your own. Now, on the other side of that, if you're looking for a 2 bed, 2 bath, and you've got a $5,000, $5,500 budget, even a $4,000 budget in some of these neighborhoods, different story, right? The options open up. Most of those agents on the list side are willing to work with other brokers. All those big managed apartment complexes usually always work with brokers. That's a completely different story. So, all in all, I think that the blame for why Chicago has gotten so expensive and so crazy over these last few years has fallen at the foot of a lot of the wrong places, right? It's very easy to go, oh, it's greedy landlords. Like it's property owners' fault that rent has gotten so expensive. But I could tell you, because I work with a lot of landlords across Chicago and a lot of investors in Chicago, they ain't making that much. A lot of them don't even like being investors here. They want to get rid of their property. They want to sell. But the reason your rent is going up is because the cost of building, the tax burden, the cost of regulation, everything in Chicago has gotten so expensive. And if you don't believe that it's possible for rents to go down, I want you to look at Austin, Texas, okay? Austin, Texas is one of the most, it's a COVID town. You know, after COVID boomed, tons of people moved there. Tons of people are still moving there. I've never been there, but I've heard nothing but great things. And a lot of people, it's a very desirable place to live. Rents are in free fall because in Texas, they, as you can imagine, have opened up the ability for these developers to build, right? They actually have an oversupply of inventory in Texas, so rent prices have gone down, okay? It's not rocket science. It is not rocket science, but until we can get to that point, and I don't see that happening for the foreseeable future, the only way to properly insulate yourself is by buying. Or you have to just be a nomad and jump around and move around every year to find cheaper rent in an area that you want to live. Because I could tell you, if you're only going to look in a set 3 neighborhoods, you're going to get priced out. Or you're just going to have no money left over on top of your rent, which means you're never going to be able to buy something at the end of it because you're going to not even be able to save up enough for a 5% down payment. So that's my 2 cents. You have to figure out a long-term strategy here, but ultimately Chicago is not going to get any cheaper anytime soon. Yes, there's plans in place and there's all these different ideas that are out there, but ultimately the only way out of this is more supply. I don't see it happening anytime soon. So figure out a strategy, get with a good agent, preferably me or my team or both of us, and let's figure out a way that makes sense for you. As always, thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate your time. We will see you in a couple weeks. And as always, we love you.